Hey, it's Mr. Lum again, and we're going to be starting Unit 4, which is Acid and Base Chemistry. So we're going to go over some basic definitions that we've hopefully learned in grade 10 and 11 about acids and bases, and then we'll move on to some more stuff. Anyways, let's start off with what is an acid. Now, there's a few different definitions of what is an acid, and the first definition we're going to talk about is the Arrhenius theory of acids and bases. Now, this definition of an acid says that acids are substances that make hydrogen ions, so the H+ ion, and bases are substances that make OH- ions. Okay, and salts are just neutralization products when an acid and base react. Okay, and they're usually like ionic compounds. So, and the basic neutralization reaction that we have done in grade 10 and 11 was this one right here, which says neutralization reaction is when an acid plus a base make a salt plus a water. And a very classic example of this would be something like HCl plus sodium hydroxide, and that reacts and makes NaCl and water. Okay, another thing that we can do is with another type of acid like sulfuric acid or H2SO4, and we can have that with let's try a different one this time, potassium hydroxide, and that will make K2SO4 and two waters. Balance this reaction up. Okay, so here is a basic or the more familiar definition of acids and bases, where an acid is something that's going to make a H+ ion. So HCl is going to make something like H+ and Cl-, and since it makes H+, we call it an acid, and NaOH, when it's placed into water, is going to make Na+ and OH-. Since it makes an OH-, we call it a base. Now a salt is just an ionic compound that is a product of an acid-base neutralization. So this would be our salt from this reaction, NaCl, and this would be our salt from this reaction, K2SO4, potassium sulfate. Now, let's go over some basic properties of acids. The first property of an acid is that all acids are electrolytes. Now, what does that mean, electrolytes? Well, an electrolyte is just something that makes ions in solution. Okay? Makes ions in solution. So why do we call it electro? Okay? Well, it makes ions in solution, and therefore it can conduct electricity. Okay, so we call it an electrolyte. For electricity to move through a solution, there needs to be ions in that solution. Okay, so again, acids will make ions in solutions because and therefore they're electrolytes. Now, another property of acids is that acids react with many metals to form hydrogen gas. Okay, so a very classic example of this is if you take magnesium, Mg, and add it with a little HCl, it'll produce some hydrogen gas. Okay, and some also Mg Cl2. Okay, very common reaction. Magnesium and hydrochloric acid making hydrogen gas. Okay, now another property of an acid is that acids taste sour, like lemons. Okay, so lemons contain an acid called citric acid, and that helps it. That's one of the things that make it quite sour. Okay, so acids are sour. It'll also turn litmus paper red, and we'll talk a little bit more about that one in a little bit. Now, base properties. Base properties are also electrolytes. They make ions in solution. So an example would be, like what we just talked about, is NaOH making Na plus and OH minus. Since it makes ions in solution, it is an electrolyte. Now, it feels slippery, okay, like soap. Soap is quite slippery, and other bases will feel slippery between the fingers. Okay, if you kind of rub it together. Bases often taste quite bitter, so they're not sour. There's bitter, and bases also turn litmus paper blue. Now, what is litmus paper? Litmus paper is just a type of paper with an indicator inside of it. So litmus paper comes in two different colors. It comes in a red color, and it also comes in a blue color. And it's the same chemical that's in both of these colors of litmus paper, but when they're placed into a solution, so if we have red litmus paper and we place it into an acid solution, well, no change will happen. The red litmus paper will stay red. But if we take the red litmus paper and put it in a basic solution, it will turn blue. Okay? So again, litmus paper, both of these litmus papers will turn red in acid, and both of these litmus papers will turn blue when put into a basic solution. So we can kind of memorize this by thinking of it this way. If it's an acid, it will turn red. Okay? And if it is a base, it will turn blue. Okay? So bases will turn blue, and acids will turn red.